Tim McKernan here for Llewellyn's Pub, one of our official sponsors, on Gateway Buick GMC's presentation of the Ryan Kelly Morning After live from spring training. And in this February, you can take advantage of food specials and $1 off all American craft beers each time your Olympic U.S. hockey team plays. And now through St. Patrick's Day, you can stop by any location for your chance to enter and win a 9-day trip to Ireland with VIP tours of Guinness, Jameson, and Magner's Brewery. That's a $5,700 value. Visit LlewellynsPub.com or ask your server for more details.
Welcome back to the Press Box on CBS Sports 920 and InsideSTL.com.
All right, I'm not going to pin you down to a player, but if you're the St. Louis Rams and you are using the second pick in the draft, what position, or if you want to give a player, you can, what position would you do?
If ESPN is right, which they may not be, that there are four kind of distinct players, I would say that Robinson at offensive tackle, if he's as good as they're saying he is, and obviously
you just take him, don't trade down, don't mess around. He's
another Orlando Pace if he's as good as he says, and he makes Bradford better and everybody else better. So my guess is I would go with him. There would certainly be some attractiveness in the kid, the wide receiver.
Sammy Watkins from Clemson, yeah.
But generally speaking, those guys don't go as high. I just can't imagine taking another pass rusher. So that would be my call. But I originally thought we should trade down, but it's
I think
if the kid Robinson is as good as they say, he may not be the sexiest pick for us, but all right. That's what I would do.
Who do you like?
Well, you said if you were drafting. I mean, I would trade down, but I agree with Ray. I would either take the offensive lineman or I'd take a defensive back, I think. One of those two positions, I think, is where they need the most help. And if the player's available that you think can be an impact player, then I would take that player. But I would trade down. I mean,
yeah.
I would.
Now, Atlanta seems to be the trading partner at 6 because you don't have to trade down that far, and you could still get one of the 3 really good tackles in the draft, and then maybe get their second and third round pick. That makes sense to me.
I think that's a reasonable. And he's got a good relationship with Atlanta, obviously, so that makes sense too.
That's right. Now, what would you do? If you address the tackle spot early, are you in agreement that you have to go wide receiver?
No, I'm not in agreement.
You're the one that doesn't agree.
No, because they've already proven they can't draft a good wide receiver. So why do it again?
Don't trust them.
Look at how many wide receivers they've drafted in the last couple of years. I mean, what are you going to keep drafting them until you accidentally hit on one? I mean,
it didn't really work for Detroit.
What's wrong? Listen, they need to develop the players. They've drafted a bunch of wide receivers. Try to figure out a way to make a couple of those guys a decent player, or go get one that you already know is a decent player. But don't waste your time drafting more of them because you've already proven that you draft receivers and then you just bury them. So I wouldn't see the point.
I'll disagree. I think they've got to focus on the offensive side of the ball. And obviously, it depends on who's available. But who's the kid from A&M?
Evans, 6'5".
If he's available, I think one of the things they don't have is a guy his size. And
Brian Quick they have.
Well, yeah, but I think that you gotta focus on the offensive side of the ball. I'll tell you who I want him to take sometime sentimentally is Henry Josie. Take him in the.
He ran a good 40-yard dash.
He had it. Did you see how well his 40 was after all that surgery? He did better than the kid that beat us up at Auburn. What's his name?
Isn't that crazy now that when we're growing up, we're picking running backs all over the first round. Now you don't even think about picking a running back early. There won't be a running back.
If you want to take a big wide receiver, they could take Washington from Missouri. He'll be around.
Yeah, but he isn't good enough. I don't think
he ran. What did he ran? He had a good camp. He's a good player. There's no. It was like I said, every draft, you go through it. There's always this guy's a can't miss. This guy's a can't miss. They took Austin last year. They've taken wide receivers over
but all their receivers are like flawed.
And they all come out.
I mean, either one's too small or one's from too small a school or one. But if you got Watkins, if you were to say, okay, I'm going to trade down to 4 or just to 2, I'm going to take this guy who's 6'1", 215, incredible 40 speed, plus great production.
Yeah.
He's not a project. He's a ready-made. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to find out about Sam Bradford.
But if you went back and looked at it, how many number 1 pick wide receivers have been that kind of impact player over the last few years. Not too many.
Well, and I agree with that, and that's why I say you probably aren't going to go with a number one in the top 4. Although to talk about LaDainian Washington, who was a good receiver in college, but not great, and there you could overdo the measurables and all this combine stuff. At some point, you got to look at how they played, and Watkins, to me, has the whole package. He could make. I certainly. Let's put it this way: if they took him. You couldn't really criticize them even at 2, I think.
I don't know. I think that wide receiver thing, that first-round draft choice, I mean, you think of some of the good ones, they were first-round draft choices.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule out a wide receiver in the first round.
Don't you want to find out about Sam Bradford? Don't you want to find out for once and for all?
Why is they've drafted receivers? Why is it always a receiver? Why is the receivers
the problem? 30th in the league in offense.
Why?
Do you think you want to improve that area just a little bit?
Well, what's wrong with the receivers they drafted?
Well, obviously, if they're finishing 30th in the league, there's a bit of a problem.
How do you know it's the receivers?
Well, I mean, look, their running back was the second best rookie running back in football the last year, and he was a good player.
By the way, you could, if the Rams took Manziel with the second pick, I think that would be a reasonable thing for them to consider doing too. I'm not, with no disrespect to Bradford, I think. Well, I saw Brian Burwell wrote a column said they can't go wrong. Well, of course they can go wrong if
they can.
In retrospect. But I think that if they pick Manziel at 2, I would think that would be something to consider. Or so I don't. I mean, and again, it could go wrong. I would think that they ought to focus on the offensive side of the ball personally, but that's just me.
Yeah, and then knowing Jeff Fisher though, they likely
they've got a much better defense than an offense right now.
Oh man, their defense is absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. And,
they need a safety. They need maybe a corner too.
But that's not going to be in the first half of the first round.
They need a little help on the back end there.
Yeah. All right. Now let's move to Stan Kroenke. So he buys this land. Everybody panics. Everybody says, "Well, he's gone." But the land could end up being for his soccer team that he's trying to bring to Los Angeles too. Your thoughts, Dan?
Well, everybody here is worried that he bought the land to build a stadium. Everybody in L.A. is worried he bought it to build a Walmart, I think, is what the deal. I don't think we were just talking about it, and I don't think anybody knows what Stan Kroenke's thinking. He doesn't let you know, and they don't. They've kind of taken a stand back and wait attitude. I think. I think they're sort of, playing the field a little bit and see what develops. But for me, the bottom line is Stan Kroenke is first and foremost a businessman. The Rams currently are I forget what the number was, but if you look at the NFL and the value of teams, they're way down there.
Yeah, maybe only Jacksonville's less.
They are 29th.
Yeah, 29.
But
so if you have a team, you can have an NFL team in St. Louis, but if you have the opportunity, and I don't know if he does or not, but if he has the opportunity to have a team in L.A., it's going to be worth a lot more than a team in St. Louis. So to me, that's the bottom line, and my guess would be that they're not going to be here.
Well, Frank, I didn't panic. I've never said it. In fact, I was on KSDK with you talking about this, when he bought the land. It's certainly, I have no way, I don't think any of us have, to get into his head as to what he's doing. I thought it was rather comical when they said, yeah, he just purchased this land and we'll get back. We hadn't really thought about what we want to do with it. It's like he picked up, some groceries on the way home from LAX. I mean, you don't normally.
But he does have a soccer team.
But the point is the Rams statement, which was he hasn't thought about what he wants to do with his land he's purchased. It was a little, I thought, unbelievable.
But could it be all soccer related? And you could be completely wrong.
But I'm not saying, I've never said it wasn't soccer related. My point is nobody knows.
But your impression is they're gone. You'd bet $1,000 right now they're gone in 3 years, right?
What I've said pretty consistently is he is a free agent. That's without dispute. It appears to be without dispute that he is not seriously, unless it's maybe very confidential, he does not appear to be entertaining offers in St. Louis to stay here. And that he has sent every sign over the past several years.
What do you mean offers from here in St. Louis to stay here? What offers are coming at him, by the way?
Well, the point is that everybody beats up on – I know for a fact that the folks on the St. Louis civic side of this would love to figure out a way to keep him here, or to figure out a deal. The problem is, I don't think, Dan makes the point very well here. And by the way, one of the reasons they're up to 29th from 31st in Forbes listings is Forbes gave them credit for nearly $100 million of $100 million of enhanced value strictly because they won the arbitration case, because they became a free agent. So the fact of the matter is, there is no doubt that if he can leave, he will. And I've said the same thing over to you for years, Frank. I don't have a crystal ball, but all the talk about how the NFL wants to expand in LA is nonsense. And all the talk about how they want to keep LA open in perpetuity as a bargaining chip is nonsense. At some point, the question's going to become whether Stan Kroenke, if LA becomes available, whether he's willing to pay the price that the fellow owners are going to extract in relocation fees. I think the idea that he's going to stay here, though, out of any kind of loyalty to Missouri or any of that is just so absurd. So, yeah, I'm afraid he's going to leave. I don't know for sure. And I've said before, at least the St. Louis Blues will be better off for it.
Yeah. By the way, the MLS commissioner, according to this text, came out and said he will not allow Kroenke to own a soccer team in L.A. because he already owns one in Denver as we speak.
So we're back to the Walmart.
There goes your soccer theory.
It's either a football team or a Walmart.
Or a random purchase of like $1 billion of land that he hadn't thought about what he wants to do with it yet.
Hey, do you think that if it came down to St. Louisans agreeing to some type of sales tax, where it may only
oh God, I hope not
cost the house. All right, let me just say. All right, I'm going to ask you this. Okay, you'll be taxed maybe $350 more. That's what's going to come out of your pocket.
No, absolutely not.
To have the National Football League here,
Absolutely
not. You want to become Memphis.
I wouldn't be taxed five more.
You want to become San Antonio.
Frank,
if that's the alternative.
San Antonio is actually healthier and weird.
But
Let me
not
tell
on
you,
Sundays in the fall.
Excuse me. I bought this argument. When I owned the Riverfront Times, and I made a lot of people on my side of the fence mad back in '91 when I bought this major league city argument. How well has it turned out for St. Louis in the last 23 years? And the fact is, talk about nonsense. Cities like Portland, Oregon, and San Antonio, Texas, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and Oklahoma City, and a whole lot of others I can name, are doing a lot better off as financially, economically than St. Louis could hope to do. St. Louis is absolutely a city that in terms and what you never seem to understand is it isn't about seeing us on TV on Sundays. It's about their ability to sell large corporations, suites, and advertising. And unfortunately, we've gone from a headquarters town to an outpost town. This town cannot support 3 professional sports franchises, which is why we're most likely going to have 2. And it's as simple as that economics, Frank. This isn't about emotion. I'm a Rams PSL owner since the beginning. This is about the economics of sport, and it's about corporations buying suites and advertising. That's what sets apart these teams. And I don't know how to way to say it.
Those corporations buying when this was like a respectable team? I mean, wasn't that sold out?
There has been a significant decline in the last 10 years. Yeah. And so,
now, is that because our economy here is so bad?
No, we're losing companies. It's neither. We're losing corporations.
There are no
left
corporations.
And right. We're losing. Anheuser-Busch was not sold to InBev. I mean, there's and they've been very supportive of local teams, frankly. But the point is, no, Frank, look at the history of this town, irrespective of sports. The last decade has been brutal, and what I can't get you ever to see is their market is not the fan. Their market in terms of what sets them apart. The reason the Dallas Cowboys are worth $2.3 billion and the Rams are worth less than $900 million is not because of the fans. It's because of the if you go to the Jerry Dome, you look around, it doesn't take you long to figure it out. That's the difference.
So let me ask you this, Dan, not you in this equation, but if you were to say to St. Louis fans, it'll cost you $350 in sales tax to build the stadium to keep them here. Do you think St. Louis would go for that?
So you want the people of St. Louis to
give the man who's worth $10 billion combined with he and his wife,
so that he'll stay here.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking me?
Look,
Frank,
talk to me about the 355 days a year that they're not playing. By the way,
Frank,
I mean,
face it, you live in Des Moines, buddy. It's over.
You don't live in Des Moines, but I think you live in a city that no longer can support 3 professional firms. And again, if you want to talk about helping somebody, the St. Louis Blues, for some reason, who have the most exciting team in the history of the franchise, are still not selling out. And I can't for the life of me figure that out as a season ticket holder. That place should be packed to the rafters.
What do you think
every
about
game.
that, Dan? Your son's an employee of the Blues.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of things. First of all, I think the NHL lockout is a part of that. I think this is residue from that. And I think with that as the background, I think people have taken a kind of I mentioned it the other day, but the expression being, kind of a show me the money kind of attitude where, yeah, they've got a good team and all that, but they want the Blues to go deep into the playoffs. They want them to actually, do something, maybe win a Stanley Cup before they're going to be convinced. I think they're just a little frustrated, and I think the NHL lockout's part of that. And certainly, the other thing that's in play here is you have the baseball Cardinals going to the playoffs in the World Series almost every summer. Every fall, they're in the postseason.
Yeah, it blows out the
so the Blues,
of the
absolutely. So the Blues historically do not, over the past probably 6-7 years, they do not draw in the first half of the season.
Dan's absolutely right. And interestingly, back to my point.
Night. It's like a World Series game
Frank,
every year.
Dan's absolutely right about that. And in addition to it, back to my point, is the St. Louis Cardinals, despite the fact that they play in a mid-sized market or a small market, have a giant footprint economically that eats up a lot of the corporate dough beyond what normally would happen in a market this size. And I will tell you, you want to talk about a contrast. You want to spend your emotion. And again, with all respect to Kevin Demoff, who's done a fine job, in his role at the Rams, the contrast in terms of an engaged, passionate owner between Tom Stillman, who cares about St. Louis and fights, the good fight, and Stan Kroenke, who doesn't, is so incredible that the thought that we would even, they are, I know they can't say it, but the St. Louis Rams and the St. Louis Blues are competitors for the same dollars. The idea that the people of St. Louis would help the St. Louis Rams versus the St. Louis Blues in that context is over beyond the pale. As far as I'm concerned, if you want to spend your emotion as a sports fan, and I happen to be a fan that goes to all of them. I got to tell you,
but Ray,
I think
it's the NFL.
You know what?
Look, Ray. If you in your little dating world, when you were this young Richard Gere type, who you used to think you were, you would put up with more with some really attractive girl that maybe was a little bitchy at times because she was beautiful and you loved being with her. Hey, this is the freaking NFL. There's nothing like it. Did you realize that the most highest rated television shows from October to January, the top 25 of the NFL. It's the NFL's world. We're just living in it, okay? We should be privileged that we have the NFL here.
It's your perspective. And the fact is, the city of Los Angeles has actually not exactly become a ghost town in the last 2 decades without football. And I would argue, if you haven't been to Portland, Oregon lately, or you haven't been to San Antonio, those are very healthy cities that somehow survive on Sunday and the rest of the week without the NFL. And the NFL, with all its concussion problems and all the other things, I'm not so sure that the NFL is quite the panacea you make it out to be. And by the way, I'm not arguing against the Rams. I think I'd love to see the Rams stay here. But the idea that we owe loyalty to a team that we basically stole from Los Angeles 19 years ago, that played there for half a century, is just absurd. The St. Louis Blues at least have their roots here to 67. Yeah. And I know it's not the same thing in terms of the NHL, but the fact that we can't sell out 20,000 seats in the Scott trade, I think I think that's where you ought to be pushing your energy, personally.
Well, I sort of agree with Frank to an extent. I think it would help the Blues if the Rams weren't around, but I don't think it would have major impact. I think what we need is for the Cardinals to move, basically. You really
would
want
open up some
You really
dollars.
want to help the Blues.
That would open up some
And I thought Storage Wars was the top-rated.
And by the way, I'm not saying the Blues want the Rams. I'm sure they don't. But the point, I think it'd be great if they could support both.
All right, we'll take a short time out. Is Bill DeWitt the best owner in the history of St. Louis professional sports? We'll talk about that when we come back.